Hello and welcome to Light Warrior Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Karen Kan, author of the #1 best-selling book, Sensitivity is Your Superpower: How to Harness Your Gifts, Fulfill Your Purpose, and Create a Life of Joy. And if you are a highly sensitive soul, 30% of us are apparently, would love for you to join the Light Medicine community on Circle. We're just having such a great time there. Sort of like Facebook, but without the ads and the spam. So the Light Medicine community, we'll put the link below this. Love to have you there. It is absolutely free to join. And every month we have some really cool activities, including our monthly free mini healings. You get to experience the Topican healing method. And if you are a sensitive soul and really don't really know what to do with all that sensitivity, maybe you're feeling it's more of a curse than a gift, then you definitely want my Sensitive Soul Empowerment Guide. The 3 ways of navigating your way to more peace, positivity, and personal power so you can really have that life of your dreams and feel really good in your body. You can get that at sensitivesoulguide.com, and that is also free. So this week, I'm really excited because we're going to be talking about conscious leadership, leading with light. I have 2 very special people with me today who are experts in this field. So I'm going to just give you their bio so you get a background of who they are. So first, we'll talk about Jennifer Mulholland. So she's an author, strategist, and executive coach. There she is, dedicated to raising global consciousness. Woohoo! Yeah, go. As co-owner of Plenty Consulting, she has guided conscious leaders and businesses to grow revenue and impact alongside her business partner, Jeff, who we'll introduce in just a moment. And previously, Jennifer was Chief Innovation Officer at SunGuard and founded multiple businesses in healthcare, technology, and holistic well-being. So exciting. Certified Reiki and Theta Healer. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Exercise and Sports Science, Psychology, and Coaching from the University of Utah. Jennifer, a former Division I athlete, enjoys life in Park City, Utah, with her husband, 2 children. Might be visiting you at some point, Jennifer. Um, and Jeff Shuck is a social impact entrepreneur and co-owner of Plenty Consulting. He has helped thousands of leaders and organizations develop strategies and foster conscious cultures. Before Plenty, Jeff was CEO at Event 360, raising nearly $1 billion for charity. Yay, Jeff. He holds degrees from the University of Rochester, Northwestern's Kellogg School, and a Master of Science in Predictive Analytics program. That is something I will not be taking anytime soon. It's like not my bag. Jeff lives in South Bend, Indiana. I recently moved there with his wife and 4 children. Well, welcome, Jennifer and Jeff.
Thank you. Great to be
Thank you
here.
so much. Thanks for
Talk
having
about
us.
bringing the light. It's very
Yeah,
light already.
yeah.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Now, to be honest, we don't have as many like businessy people, on the Light Warrior Radio show. But this is really cool because loving what I'm seeing on your website and the kind of work that you do, and I love it when people are really successful and their focus is on consciousness and then conscious leadership. Is so exciting. So I'd love to know, maybe we'll start with you, Jennifer. Like, how did you get started in all of this?
Well, it's a long story, so I'm going to cut to the chase, but I do want to comment on, yeah, it's really cool. There are conscious businesses and there are conscious leaders everywhere in the world because they're humans and we're all waking up. And
Mm,
so we are really looking at like not a bifurcation anymore of like, if you're a healer, you have to do this kind of work. And if you're a business person, you have to do this kind of work. You know, the integration of both, if you are sensitive or have a healing modality, you can bring that into business. And that's what we've done. And it's really an exciting time for people on the planet, including ourselves, um, to awaken. So my path, I would say from a really young age, I was very clear that I wanted to make a massive positive difference in the world. And in my early journals, before I was a teenager, that is my statement. And I just had a very clear purpose. I was always interested in human potential. And my path to that was really sports. I was a 3-sport athlete. My mom and grandmother were tennis professionals, skied. I fell in love with the sport of lacrosse and carried that through playing field hockey and lacrosse at the University of Delaware in college. And that playground really taught me how to be a leader on and off the field. I was captain, I was coach, I learned teamwork, I learned strategy, and I really wanted to bring that into my professional kind of entrepreneurial passions. And I founded my first nonprofit in 1995 when I moved to Utah and there was no women's lacrosse, and took those skills and really brought that as the backbone of the values we were teaching girls and women ages 6 to 60 how to become leaders, how to develop initiative, how to work together in a harmonious way on and off the field. And then I got introduced to a friend who introduced me to a friend who was in the dot-com startup technology days. And I was really good with people. I loved people and I loved leading people. And I was introduced to Jeff, who was actually hiring. He had just gotten to this software company in Salt Lake City called Campus Pipeline, and he hired me to be a part of this movement to revolutionize higher education. That was our BHAG at the time. And literally, we were the first .edu that was wiring universities and colleges before they were online. We were helping them do so. So Jeff and I just hit it off. Then we had a kindred connection, and I ended up staying and growing the consulting team and becoming innovation officer through many mergers and acquisitions for almost a decade, until I kind of got an itch, and my body was, well, that sounds like my body had an itch. My body didn't literally have an itch. Um, my body was getting my attention. I wasn't able to sleep, and I had something going on that I needed to take a time off for a bit to kind of really listen to what was I here for? What was I meant for? And listening to that cue, I decided to leap and start my own executive coaching company, which then morphed into kind of different expressions of helping people come together in community for being healthy, happy, and whole, to using healing energy and wellness talks and local events into a technology platform with the idea to replicate that in cities across the country to help people share what worked around being healthy, happy, and whole. Um, Jeff and I later reconnected, and I'll let him tell you his story, but he had started Plenty Consulting for the first year doing fundraising consulting. And when we got together, we just kind of knew we had a parallel path and a parallel vision to make this world a better place, and to do so by helping people and helping companies and organizations. So we blended his fundraising expertise with my wellness, spirituality, and we both had a combined love and passion for leadership and strategy to make what's Plenty Consulting today. So my path has been very zigzaggy, lots of leaps of faith. I would say the Indiana Jones Bridge has always caught me, but I've never, when I get a vision, I usually can't shake it, and trust the universe and the higher light that we speak about in the book to catch me and to help manifest what that vision is really meant to be. So I love where we are today. I feel so on purpose and so grateful to get to help conscious companies and conscious people really become more awakened and aware, aligned to their light, and then empowered to express themselves, to do good in the world, and to make their life better. So I'm a mom of 2 kids, going through that as well, and more to say, but grateful to be here with you today.
Oh, wow. That is so, so cool. All right. How about Jeff? What's your side of the story?
I I have to tell you, I dread this question. I dread going
Yeah.
second after Jennifer, and I think I hear her describe her path, and it doesn't sound very zigzaggy. She always talks about how she had a sense, of who she was. And I don't know that I can say that honestly. And I would also say as I get older, I'm looking back at my life and I see different things. And I see common threads and themes that I probably didn't realize at the time, you know? So I don't know what I would have said when I was 12 or 16 or 8 or even 25. I know what I wrote in the book when we had to write a bio is I describe myself as a wonderer and a wanderer. And I think that is a common thread. You know, I wasn't athletic growing up. I was a dreamer. I played Dungeons and Dragons and I played with Legos and I thought about fantasy. I loved music. I wanted to be a professional musician and spent a little bit of time in that space. I think I really didn't find a lot of kind of concrete businessy things compelling, to be honest. My dad was in business. I saw him work every night until 11 p.m. There was nothing interesting about it to me. I wanted no part of that world. Um, and a couple, it's interesting, Dr. Karen. So since we released the book about 6 months ago, we've done a lot of interviews. And I would say every interview, I learned something about myself because I dread this question. It always comes up. I answer it a slightly different way every time. One thing that I heard myself say a few months ago on an interview is I definitely never felt like a leader. I was the last kid chosen in a lot of things. Um, but one day I was maybe in my high school years and I was organizing my friends, and that was something that was natural to me, like getting people to do the same thing. And I was at this time, there was no internet. I was on the phone making all these phone calls, trying to get people to agree about what we should do on a Friday night. And I remember I hung up one of the phone calls and my dad said, "You're such a natural leader." And it's not a word that anyone had ever said to me about any single thing. And it stuck in there. The other thing that I think has been a common thread is, I got picked on a lot growing up. Just like, if you're a thoughtful child who likes to dream and isn't good at sports, you get picked on. And I have always had a really strong backbone around defending people who were getting picked on. And that developed really in my high school and college years as just being someone who encourages others. And I think those two common threads kind of started to weave together and become a little more coalesced in my world. And as I grew up, I did discover fitness and discovered, being more healthy and living more healthy and being more thoughtful and looking to others for wisdom. And now the things that we would call consciousness and spirituality and trying to find doorways for those. But those two common threads of feeling I was good at organizing others and really defending people who couldn't defend themselves were catalyzed in my late 20s when my mother died of cancer. And at that point, I wasn't a child anymore. I was still a young person compared to how old I am now. But I really had a very intense experience of feeling that there's more that we should do. There's more that I could do. And um, and if at Plenty we believe if you have a nudge, that is the sign, right? The leaning into something. I wonder if I should do something more is the sign that you're ready for something more. And so I was, I think, 28 or 29 and had this feeling that I should get involved in raising money for people who need help. And I didn't know much at all about fundraising. I certainly had no formal training in it. Um, I didn't know much about cancer, honestly, other than it took my mother from me. But through making a bunch of connections and getting better, I think it just mobilizing people. I first went to the internet, which was maybe one step adjacent from what I wanted to do, and met Jen, and we had a great team, and I got experience building teams, and then talked my way essentially into a fundraising firm, and just did that for a number of years through an existing group that I worked at, and then started another company with a set of colleagues, and really found that fulfillment in raising a lot of money to help people who needed help. And there's more to say about that story too, but long story short, I really thought that I had found my calling and am very proud of that work I did. But there was always something more kind of under, I think, underpinning that. It wasn't necessarily about fundraising or about even cancer as it was about helping people. And I would go back to the kind of the common themes of helping people get along and helping people believe in themselves. And so through a number of different iterations, many of which are actually covered in the book, Jen and I reconvene, and I think that's evolved into what Plenty is now, is this really unique, incredible firm, like Jen says, that does incredible work, that has these two guiding characters at the center of it between me and Jen, but that has really been added to and expanded and magnified in so many ways by the lovely souls and beautiful people that we work with who bring their light to it too. So I'll stop there. I feel like I'm wandering now, even as I describe myself as a wanderer, but I live in South Bend, Indiana, which is a beautiful place here in the woods. I have 4 kids who are one of the joys of my life, and really, really proud and happy to be here today.
That's great. I love these stories. It's really fascinating. And sometimes some of the things that we go through in our earlier life, that can be really stressful, and grief and loss and things like that really help make us, who we are today. And we're all still evolving, which is super cool. Now, both of you mentioned the book that was released a number of months ago. So perhaps you can tell us the name of the book and where we can find it.
Yeah, have it right here just to
Look at
show if
that.
anybody's watching. It's called Leading with Light, Choosing Conscious Leadership When You're Ready for More. And it has, a lot of the wisdom and the learnings that we learned going through our own leadership experience, and then 10 years of leading a leadership retreat called Lantern here in Park City, Utah, where executives and managers and entrepreneurs and mothers and fathers and leaders of all kinds come to spend 4 days really clarifying who they are, what they care about, what lights them up, what doesn't, and really helping them turn their light back on or up the eminence and the illumination of their own light. And it's a really special experience. And so a lot of the book is about helping to kind of make a claim for conscious leadership. We define it as being aware, aligned, and intentional. And all of those things are within our power to harness. We can choose to become more aware. We can expand our awareness by our presence, by what we see and sense and hear and know. And then once we do that, we can become much more aligned to it. We can know when we're in alignment with it and out of alignment for ourselves, that no one has to tell us, but we actually can fine tune ourselves.
Mm.
And then we can, with that, lead with more intention. We get to choose where we're showing up, who we're showing up with, how we're showing up, all of those things. So the Leading with Light really begins with that construct. And then we weave in our personal stories. So you'll learn a lot more about who we are as human beings and leaders. And then we weave in a lot of our client stories, as we've worked with some of the largest brands in the world, from for-profit and nonprofit and local entrepreneurs and doctors, and some of their stories as they are the people behind the business, right? And breaking down some misconceived conceptions of what it is to lead with light in work and life. And then there's a bunch of exercises as well that can ground the concepts of how do you not only be the light you are, but how do you bring that light wherever you choose to show up. So it's very different than a lot of the leadership books out there. And we would say the space is quite saturated. But Jeff and I, we talk about that this is not an instruction manual. It's not going to tell you what to do to become a better leader. It's going to remind you how to be and how to be you, and how you can connect with the quality, the essence, the intelligence of your own light. And if you have that within yourself, everyone you come in contact with and everyone you lead must have it too. So yeah, you can find it at leadingwithlightthebook.com. We actually have a free chapter if you want to download that at that site, or our website is plentyconsulting.com, or you can get it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Bookshop. And we are actually in the process of recording the Audible version, which fingers crossed is going to come out on the solstice, winter solstice 2024.
Oh, that's
Dr.
exciting.
Can I add something that Jen sparked? I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, but I got excited there. I think one of the things I just wanted to give a little context to the subtitle. The book's Leading with Light. The subtitle is Choosing Conscious Leadership When You're Ready for More. And I said a few minutes ago that I would describe myself as a wanderer and a wanderer. And I think we have seen in our work that everyone has a wanderer's heart and everyone has a wanderer's heart. And especially in this field, we're all dreaming and we're seeking and when we're visioning. And we've started to notice that a very common sentence that we'd hear from people, whether they were a year out of college or about to retire and wondering about their third act, whether they were starting as a solo, yoga practitioner, or whether they were running a billion-dollar company, is, I think there's more out there for me. And that question became very interesting to us and not interesting isn't the right way because it's not cerebral. I think we became very drawn to that at a soul level and started to see it everywhere, right? When you notice something that is your calling, you see it everywhere you look. And we started to hear that phrase over and over. I feel like I'm ready for more. And so in a lot of ways, that is a defining thread. It's like the backbone of the book of what do we do when we feel like we have more to offer and we just see there's roadblocks all over the place, or when we think that everything that we used to depend on is falling apart, or when we want to change ourselves and destroy that old way of thinking of ourselves. Like, what do we do in that place? And that place calls for a different kind of leadership, which we would call conscious leadership. And it's a journey inside. And the person that we can count on in that journey is ourselves. In fact, it's the only person who can lead us through that journey. So I just want to give a little more context to that part of the theme. And it's just a fascinating journey when you meet that person who says, I'm ready for more. And as I said earlier, when you hear that calling, that's the sign that you are ready for more, when you feel like it's out there for you. So we just wanted to give a field guide for people who are in that place. No one can make that journey for them, but wow, it's nice to know that other people have traveled that same path. And we became very, very, I think, compelled by that path ourselves.
Oh, that's beautiful. Absolutely. There are a lot of key things that you said in there that really, really resonates. I know for myself, when my parents found out I wanted to go to medical school, well, it's like, yeah, that's what Asian kids do, especially first generation, they go to medical school. So I was kind of people pleasing there, but also really, really love science and love to help people. And then I remember when I went into acupuncture because I was like, there's some limits to Western medicine. And when I did this elective in acupuncture, which we could do in Canada, I got instantaneous results. And I'm like, well, hey, this is exciting, right? And then when I went, into that full time, my parents were like, what are you doing? You're an MD, like, what about the money, right? And then,
Mhm.
of course, and then once they got comfortable that, oh, I could make money. Oh, okay. You can make money, acupuncturists, they got kind of, all right, we're jiggy with that. And then I'm like, yeah, well, actually, I'm going to close my office. And we're going to do this online educational stuff. And they're like, what are you doing? Right? But it was like this calling, right? Like this,
Yeah.
there's more. And I would never have 20 years ago thought that I would be here today. And there are, bumps along the way, talking about that meandering path, Jennifer, it's like, oh, I thought I was going to be a relationship coach. I was really good at it. But the universe is like, that's not exactly what we want you to do. So we're going to have you fail here, here, and here. So you can come all the way back to here, health, to be what you are today. And if I was, telling my old self, by the way, you'll be healing demons and we're talking with angels and aliens and all that kind of stuff, I'd be like,
Mm,
you're crazy, you know?
mm,
But that's like, it's so amazing how we can dive into that inner world. I love what you said, Jeff. It's like it's not an instruction book as do this, do this. It's not Scrum. It's not like some of these other business books, right?
mhm,
4 Hour Work Week, like all these different business books that are sort of here's you do it faster, easier, quicker, but even some of those books have an inner diving inwards. But I think yours is really primarily, it's like, let's get our answers within. You're not alone. This is the expansion, and this is conscious leadership is going within. So I just love that you guys made this book. It's so cool.
mm,
So congratulations.
mm.
Thank you. Thank
Mm,
you.
Thank
so
you.
neat. Now we just touched on a little, about misconceptions, Jennifer. So, like, what have you seen, or Jeff, what have you seen in the field about being a leader in the consciousness space? Are there some misconceptions out there about what we should or shouldn't be, or how it's working in the business world?
Mm.
Jeff, do you want to answer that first? And
Yeah,
I'll,
I mean, there's a couple places that takes me. The first is just, I think at this moment in time in the world, we need to think about leadership differently. And
Mm,
it, it's a it's one of many words and concepts that's kind of gotten co-opted and commoditized. And a lot of what is celebrated in business as leadership or as financial leadership is just management, right? It's directing things. It's it's putting pieces on a board. It's kind of moving things around. I think we also confuse leadership with personality or with popularity and
charisma.
charisma, right? And can be a helpful tool, and personality can be a helpful tool, and popularity probably is a tool that can help you, and management is needed at different times. I think that's not leadership, though. Leadership starts with being honest with yourself. In our work at Plenty, we talk about the one person that you talk with more than any other person is yourself. So be honest with yourself, right? If you're concerned about leaving a job because your parents want you to have that job, then the most important conversation to have is not with your parents. It's with yourself. And can I have that conversation? Can I be honest with myself about what is here? I don't have to do anything about it yet, but can I be honest that I'm scared to make a decision because I don't want to disappoint my parents? Or I'm scared of making a decision because I'm comfortable with the amount of money that I make, and I'm scared that there won't be money other places. There's lots of places to unpack those observations, but the leadership to say that I will be authentic with myself first, forget about being authentic with everyone else. Like, sharing your authentic self with the world is awesome, but for so many people that is a huge second step to just being truthful with myself, just knowing myself, understanding what I really want, and maybe trying to be kind to myself. And in the Plenty way, all of those, telling yourself the kind truth, that's that's a different kind of leadership. So I'll stop there because there's so many places we can take it, but I'll defer to Jen for one of many places that we could go next. But I think it starts, I just want to reiterate, thinking about leadership in a different way, and thinking about honesty and authenticity in a different way.
I love that. And before we turn to you, Jennifer, I remember one time my first spiritual teacher, and this is when I was really down and out with my fibromyalgia. I was very, very sick, and I had found her in town. And some way along, my Reiki training, she said, it's not about what you're doing, because I was a very good doer, still am, very productive. She said it's who you are being while you were doing. And I was like, I don't know what she's talking about. But later on, I did figure it
Mhm.
out because I noticed that just by if I'm in that state of, self-love and just really happy with myself, then inevitably the people that I touch, it makes a bigger difference to them. It's not about what I did for them, but just who I was with them. So that was like, oh, it took me years to actually like cognitize what she was saying, but it's similar to what you were saying, Jeff. You are saying, Jeff, around that piece. So Jennifer, your thoughts.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm so interested in that conversation. We call that identity, like uh, who am I? What is my identity of being while I'm doing? You could say that that's your presence. We call that your light. You could call that your goddess, your God self. You could call that spirit. Whatever your name for it is, we are that beyond our form. We are that beyond our look, our background, our personality, our ego, our mind, and that we are terming light. And when we can come from light, that foundational, pure essence that is connected to all light, all the universal field of intelligence, the space and place we all are made up of and we all come from, that is to me the conversation. It's how do we help each other look for the light in ourselves? Because if we can't see it, we can't see it outside. We will not be able to see it in another. We will continually believe that we are meant to be pit against, or we will be self-perpetuating the polarization that is alive and well right now. But if we reorient our identity as to who we really are, that light beyond form, the soul, the essence, the presence that you talk about, like the impression we leave when we enter a room, when we have a conversation, the impact that without even saying anything, we've touched the heart or mind of someone else. Like, what is that? And it's curious because there's not a boundary to it. And so how do we bring that into our lives, our leadership, our workplace? That how do we like really awaken to that sense of self? That it's not the activities that we're doing, it's the essence of how we're doing it. I love what you just shared, the being of the doing. And I think we have a construct that like you can't do that in business. Well, we call total bullshit on that. Like business is the playground, right? And there are good
Yeah.
people everywhere. And
Mm.
so I think what is falling away, what's dismantling, is that the old constructs, the old systems, the old way of leadership is no longer sustainable. It is crumbling, and we know it. For those of us who have been tapped in, tuned in, this has been predicted for centuries and eons, that we're living in the most important time in history of the planet to ascend, to awaken to a higher consciousness. That means we cannot identify with our personalities wholly and our thoughts wholly and our belief systems wholly. That when that falls away, when new things come to light, when things change and get uprisen and uplifted or dismantled, then your identity is shaken. But your identity doesn't need to be shaken if you are like literally identifying to the light that's within you, right? And
Mm.
so I love that about leadership, and that there's just been a fallacy, and I've lived it wholeheartedly in my corporate days where I was completely in the spiritual closet. I could not talk about my healing training. I could not talk about me leaving my body. I could not talk about the hundreds of sessions I had in past life regressions, in vision quests, in being visited by guides and angels and spirits. There is no way that was okay. I think we use discretion now, right? Not everybody has those experiences. Not everybody buys and believes that. Some people listening will think I'm crazy. But what we found in doing conscious work, conscious leadership, conscious strategy in business is that businesses are made up of people. And like your show, there's an awakening happening where people feel like there is something more to what we've been led to believe and what we're
Hmm.
being told and sold. And so that is this, it's so exciting to be part of this collective awakening that we get to choose. What are we ready to see? What are we ready to like sense and know to be true for ourselves, and not have to place that on anybody else? But like Jeff said, like just knowing what you stand for, knowing where you come from, knowing who you are matters more than ever. So that's an
Oh
interesting
yeah.
conversation.
Oh,
Mhm.
totally. I love what you said, like being grounded in the essence of who we are. And then there's a new paradigm of business, new meaning that it's not what we've been conditioned to believe business has to be, because that, especially with a lot of this dance of, divine masculine and feminine and business, a lot of women that I found that have been in corporate, I actually have quite a few friends, they're burnt out. They got
Yeah,
Mhm.
really, really burnt out, and
totally.
they didn't feel like that masculine energy, like, they just couldn't tolerate it, and they were like, now, like, one's a farmer, like, they're completely doing other things, is that it doesn't have to be the way it has been in the past, and that's why it's so exciting. Some of the work they're doing in your book is really saying, "Hey, there is another paradigm here. It does not have to be this pyramid thing." People talk about pyramid schemes being legal and all that kind of stuff, but if you
Mhm.
look at a lot of the old business model, we have your CEO, CFO, COO, and we've got this managers, then we got sub managers, and it looks like a pyramid, right until you get to the male guy at the bottom. So and people that are like healers, and they just really like, they just really don't like that
Mhm.
energy, and so they don't know that there's an alternative, and that's what you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so many layers to what both of you are sharing, and I think I don't want to I don't want to give people the impression that we only work in business. I think Jen said it great when she said that's a playground, but we've worked with hospitals, we've worked with a lot of nonprofits. In fact, that's really where we grew up. We've worked with healers, we've worked with spiritual practitioners. Really, what people do during the day is, I think, less interesting to us, like Jen said, than showing people how they could be, helping them show
Mm,
themselves how they could be is really what it is. And the juxtaposition here. So when we talk about conscious leadership, we're not just thinking about it in terms of an org chart. We're kind of contrasting it to the reactive management many of us use to get through our day, and that kind of need to juggle every plate, and that need to put everything in a task list, and that incredible pace of responding that many of us feel, whether we're stay-at-home parents or running huge companies, just always reacting, always being on, always responding to stimulus, and saying, what if there's a different way? What if we could be interdirected? And if that's possible, what would be the gyroscope? Like, so what directs us if we're interdirected? That comes back to the light that Jen's talking about. And then when you start to explore that light, you realize pretty quickly, well, I'm just not thinking about this. There's other things that I'm tapping into. When I'm interdirected, I'm tapping into some other groundswell, some other wellspring of what we would say is consciousness or divinity or science, or however you want to explore it. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is these concepts can get so theoretical and so spiritual that I think sometimes we find we lose some people right away when we go there. So it's kind of, for some people, we have to bring it back to, wouldn't you love not to be triggered every 10 minutes? Wouldn't you love not to be stressed when you open your inbox? That's possible. And it's all from the same tree. It's all coming
mm,
from that same place. As you can use it as the vehicle for spiritual ascension, but along the way, maybe you'll get less triggered by your inbox too. And that's a great thing, to have fewer people feeling like they're so bruised and raw and need to protect
Mhm.
themselves from everything that's counter to what they think or believe. There's a different way to open ourselves up to the world and each other.
Yeah. And that's ultimately leading ourselves. I think that's the hope of the book, is that whoever reads it is going to find more calm, comfort, confidence in leading themselves. And the more we can lead ourselves and give ourselves permission to really fill up, nurture, nourish what we need out of this life, what we need to serve and to feel vital and used, that then it just, once we reverse engineer the giving tree, right? When we really can fill our own buckets of leading ourselves, then we can't help but naturally model the way for others, and it just becomes a lighter path.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. Now, just I wanted to get your opinion about, or your thoughts around this idea of, we there's a lot of talk, especially in the spiritual communities, about being the light. Being the light, emanating your light, and I'm also using this um, synergistically with the word, our essence. Being our divine essence. So, what about the dark? Meaning that, the shamanic traditions and other types of traditions in the healing process talk about really seeing the other parts of ourselves that may not traditionally be called light,
Yeah.
the triggers, the conditioning, the pain, the trauma. How does that all figure in to the whole light and conscious leadership discussion?
I love that. Also known as the shadow.
Yes.
Um, you know, I believe personally, we have no context for light without the dark. There's no contrast. Like, you can't see the light without having darkness, right? And so this has been like a really juicy, deep, transformative, hard journey for me. I will just speak and let Jeff share his, but I've been a light seeker my whole life. And it really wasn't until I stumbled on Debbie Ford's work and did training with her and giving myself permission to look at my shadow, and really didn't want to see it, to be honest. But the gift of her work, she's no longer in physical form, but she wrote like 14 books. I loved her. She was one of my just most clear teachers, and brave and courageous. And the biggest takeaway I would say that she helped me see, that I now share, is that every part of ourselves that we don't want to look at, that surfaces as a trigger or is our shadow, has a gift in it. It always does. So I'll give an example. Um, One of the things that surfaced for me is my grandmother was an incredible entrepreneur. She was a tennis pro. She invented the first tennis ball boy machine. She invented the first sport rebound net back in the late 60s. Um, she invented the first group teaching method for tennis and was incredibly successful. Didn't patent any of it, and went from this abundant wealth to, over time, losing a lot through my grandparents' divorce, and the farm got sold, and there's just a whole bunch of unraveling. But she was such a model for so many positive things. Like, back in the day, this entrepreneurial, literally on her business card, her title was Master Motivational Coach in the 60s. Like, that wasn't, I learned my signature, Love and Light, from her back in the day. And But I noticed as I got older, I was effing pissed that I saw her as a victim. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but I have never really related to, I've been turned off by victim consciousness. And it wasn't until I was able to see that the one quality in her being a victim, she had many other beautiful qualities, but that shadow side, I didn't want to be it. I never wanted to be it. And so I was guided to say, well, what's the opposite of being a victim? What did it birth in you? And for me at the time when I was in my 20s, it was a leader. The leader was the opposite of the victim. The leader was empowered to make choices. The leader took leaps of faith on herself. The leader was courageous and followed her own tune. And I wasn't able to see that what I didn't want to be was birthing who I was to become. And that's the gift of the shadow. And later in life, I have always strived, I don't know if that's the right tense, to unconsciously have it all together and be a high performer and to look a certain way and to present myself a certain way, to speak a certain way, to have a style, to be prepared, to have things organized. And man, when I am messy and unput together and disheveled, I have never was able to give myself permission to be that human part. And that's the dark and light dance. We all have the messy, shitty side of ourselves. We all have the shadow side. We all have, that to birth, to give us the wisdom to be the light. And they work in a symbiotic nature. And it's uncomfortable to go to the shadow side, but being trained in shamanic medicine myself, that is the place of birth. That is the place that helps us become the light we seek. So for anybody listening, like at first blush, the shadow's scary, and yet in it harnesses the greatest wisdom and the greatest gifts if we're willing to just be with it and ask the shadow parts of ourselves what it's here to teach us and what it wants to birth in us.
I love that
Mm.
point that there is this, we're not saying be unconscious. The whole point is to be conscious, to be honest with yourself. I think seeing the shadow as something that needs to be fixed, right? Seeing that our flaws
Mm.
need to be repaired and fixed is what we're pointing to as maybe something that one could step beyond, as we're talking. It's a beautiful early fall day here in South Bend, and the light's getting longer and more golden. And as Jen's talking, it's dancing. If you're watching on video, the light's kind of dancing behind me, and it's all on this wall. But when I really stop to look, the light isn't moving. The shadows are what's dancing around. That's what I actually see moving, is my shadow changing and growing and getting smaller. And there are times for all of us where we experience no shadow at all, and we might see that we're our best selves. There's also times that we can't really get there without being in places of extreme darkness. And so I think the practice that we're doing ourselves and that we're helping others guide themselves through is the idea of not trying to stamp out every flaw, but embrace the flaws we have. Jen, I'm trying to think of the term from years ago. Jen and I went to a retreat and we were talking about this concept, and one of the facilitators talked, I think it's called wabi sabi, this principle in Japanese art where you introduce or honor the perfections in the art, because the perfection is what helps us see the art.
The
So
imperfection.
yeah, the imperfections. So seeing the cracks in the pottery, for example.
Mm.
The other comment, though, I'd make to why I think there's so much emphasis on light and light seeing in the space right now is, man, there's so many people teaching us to be shadow catchers, right? There's so many forces that just want you to be dark dealers and point out, oh, I see that flaw. And, everyone can be a nitpicker now. Everyone can be an armchair quarterback. Everyone can be an expert after the fact. And everyone has a soapbox to do it. It's never been easier to point out someone else's flaws or, and so I do think there needs to be more of an emphasis right now on helping people see the good, helping people realize that the good far outweighs the bad, that there's so much more light than there is shadow, and that it's natural, even in the world around us, there's whole seasons where there's more darkness than light. That is the way of things. But I do think we're in this place, particularly when people are observing themselves. Dr. Karen, we do a assessment at Lantern, our leadership retreat, where we ask people to invite the people that are important to them in their lives to think about these practices of conscious leadership. And it's a really cool exercise. It can get a little heady at times, so we have to kind of help people facilitate through it because people get this feedback and 95% of it is glowing and incredibly flattering and enriching and emboldening. And what everyone looks to almost immediately is where they scored the lowest. And everyone goes directly to their flaws. It's so easy to see that in ourselves. And it's so hard to honestly, honorably, without ego or arrogance, say, I have these great qualities. So I do think that's why I think we're not practiced at it. And I think
Mhm.
that's why there needs to be so much talk about the light right now. It's easy to forget that it exists, I think.
Ah, yeah, that's great. I remember Debbie Ford's Dark Side of the Light Chasers, because definitely was a light chaser. And her book or the movie The Shadow Effect was really impactful. I cry through it every time I see it.
So good.
Yeah, and I definitely was the poster child for stay in the light, stay in the light, stay in the light. Only about the just don't talk about the dark, you know. And just to give an example for our listeners, um, I used to want to be, well, I still want to be the best, but for different reasons. So I wanted to be perfect and the best because I couldn't stand if anybody said that I was lazy. So there was the shadow. If
Yep.
any, there were two triggers I had. If they ever said I was lazy and if they ever said I was selfish, that would just like wound me to the core. But then the gift side of that is, well, what happens when I'm lazy? Well, the gift side is that self-care. So I literally burnt my body, I just
Yep.
burned out because it was just about everybody else, everybody else, everybody else. I came last, I came last. Same thing with the selfishness. I always had to prove to this nebulous, family, whatever I put in there that was trying enough. So I always had to be stressed because if I was stressed, my parents would leave me alone, not ask too much of me
Yep.
and other people. If I looked stressed, people, ooh, I'm not gonna ask anything more of her. She's already stressed, right? But if I looked really relaxed, you know, um, then he'd be like, oh, we can ask more. So I was always afraid of that. And you're gonna love this little story. I knew that I really embraced this part of my shadow when one time I was at the acupuncture office and one of my funny, patients, he always likes to make fun of people. So I said, oh, you know what? I can't see you on this week. I'm going to be away. And he goes, oh, must be nice. Like that. And in the past, I would go into defensiveness, like, you know how many hours we go on call when we're a medical
Yeah.
doctor, blah, 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 right? But I caught it. I caught it. I felt it and I went, I said to the universe, I'm passing this test. So I
Yes.
look him in the eye and I go, yeah, it's really nice. And you
Yes.
should do it more often.
Right.
Yes.
And then after that, like I never got that again as
Yep.
mirroring back my own judgment of myself. Anyway, so I
Completely.
love this conversation.
Great example. Great example. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So I'd love for you to share again the name of the book and your website, and then perhaps talk a little bit about who you're serving right now, like, who's a
Mm.
good fit for what you have to give.
Well, that's lovely. Well, maybe I'll take the first part. Thank you for the invitation. Again, the book is called Leading with Light, Choosing Conscious Leadership When You're Ready for More. You can find it wherever good books are sold, as they say. We talked about Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There's a great outlet called bookshop.org. So if you would prefer to patronize your local bookstore, local independent bookstore, you can go to bookshop.org and designate a bookstore who will receive credit for the purchase. So we're proud to be on that network. And soon, these two voices that you've been listening to for a half hour are going to be reading the book, and you can find it on Audible and Apple and all kinds of other places. And again, the website is plentyconsulting.com. But if you look up the book, you will find it. I do want to say to people, there are so many books out there, particularly leadership books, and I would say spiritual books that are a bit of a rigorous read. We wanted this to be like hot chocolate on the couch with a blanket. It is written to be a comfortable read. We are flattered when people say to us, "Oh my gosh, I tore through it in a day." So it's meant to be you're sitting down with one of your good friends, on a cozy porch on a fall day, and you're talking about the things that most light you up. That is the intent of, and I think the tone of this book. So would say it's written for everybody listening, and we hope you'll give it a whirl.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. And then, in terms of, your retreats, consulting, like, who are you looking for that might be a fit for you now?
Yeah, we love working with conscious leaders and organizations and companies who have outgrown the way of operating. It's just not working
Mm,
anymore. What they've tried things are shifting, and they really want a more meaningful, experiential, efficient way to align their teams and to align the growth for their company or for their movement or for their organization. Um, you know, we love working with people who are going through transitions or teams that are needing more alignment, wanting a better culture. We have beautiful processes and assessments and models and retreats that help teams and organizations really create a new strategy for a new world and a new way of being. And we believe that you can do good and do well in the world at the same time. And we have proof of it, that the leaders that have gone through this experience, they're proud of it because they created it. This is not
mm,
something that Jeff and I are telling you how to do or be. We create a safe space. We create an immersive environment for people to take off the masks, the holdings, the limitations for
mm,
themselves and their company to really think about what could be possible if we aligned what we deeply care about, what we are so great at, with what the need is out there in the world. And that lights us up. The working with executives, CEOs, managers, people, human beings who really are feeling that sense that there's something more possible for themselves and for the people that they lead. And um, yeah, I would say, the best work with the companies are the people that are willing to slow down to actually speed up. They're willing to get off the hamster wheel, to drop in deep, to get clear about what matters most and what the market need is, and how we can align both the head and hearts of the people to create something special. So
mm.
um, yeah, we love what we get to do. I think if you're listening as an individual, we have Lantern, our leadership retreat, that is a beautiful experience to help you if you're in transition into a new phase and stage, for you really to turn up your light. And then if you're a business owner or a leader and you're looking to bring your team to something really special that they'll talk about for years. I mean, we have clients that have come back and they're still using the strategy we help them create years later, that we keep getting that was the highlight of their career. So if that feels exciting, It's possible, and that's what we aim to offer.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's so great to know that
Yeah.
you do that kind of stuff. Do
Yeah.
you have any last, words of wisdom? We'll start with you, Jeff, before we end for today.
Talking about pressure.
I
Last
know. I said I was going to do
wisdom.
Jennifer first, but you're up.
Um, I guess what I'd pick up on is one of the themes you intimated a little bit in our conversation about business and how, especially when we're spiritual practitioners, kind of rubs us the wrong way sometimes, as does the pursuit of financial gain. And a lot of things in the current structures just seem like they don't work. And a lot of them probably don't work for a lot of us. I think we make things hard on ourselves by taking concepts and deciding that they have some normative value, just like shadow and light. There's nothing bad about having flaws. We all have flaws. It's called being human. And there's nothing great that you have strengths. We all have those too. Just like there's nothing bad about money. It's a tool and it's not always used the right way. But if we resent the tools that we have all agreed to have in society, we end up working against ourselves. And it's part of that honest conversation, I think, that we were talking about earlier. Being willing to really say, when you say like, well, it's okay that my practice isn't growing because, I'm doing good work. And it's okay that, I'm alone, even though I want a relationship because I'm holding to my standards. We want to hold to our standards and we want to do good work. But there's a lot of people who have a lot of integrity who are in powerful relationships that are reinforcing. There's a lot of people doing great work in this world who are running huge companies, like Jen said. And so it's just making sure that the messages that we're telling ourselves aren't working against what we actually are
Right.
here to manifest for ourselves. I know that's kind of a heady last words of wisdom, but because you brought it up earlier, I just wanted to mention it. Maybe we can spend another podcast talking about it, but we often see that the only barrier for people achieving what they believe is possible for themselves are their own limiting beliefs about whether
Mm,
they deserve what they think is possible. You deserve it. If you can imagine it, you deserve it.
I
Doesn't mean
love
you
that.
get it
I
without
agree with
working
that.
for it, but you deserve it. So that's my words of wisdom, I guess.
Oh,
Trying to
that's beautiful.
practicing it myself as well.
I love it.
I
Thank you. Thank you. How about
I
you,
have
Jennifer?
two thoughts. One, to play off Jeff just as a seed, and I know most of your listeners already know this, but it's a great reminder that money is currency and currency is energy.
Mm,
And our relationship to energy, whether it's flowing or stagnant or feels heavy and dense or light and free, it's our relationship to it. And that's the work, right? Like that there are a lot of people out there. There are good people, good companies doing good in the world and making a shit ton of money doing it. And it's it's okay. And it's what is our relationship with the currency that is a tool, that is an energetic frequency, that it is our choice, as Jeff said, to see it as evil or good or right or wrong. And I think that's the individual work we all get to see. Which is where are we in relationship to currency? Um, and the last thing I was going to just offer in today's reckoning, once the patriarchal society and the top-down pyramid, as you were talking about structures and the silos and the uh, political parties and everything is changing, it's dismantling, it will continue to change and dismantle quickly. That when we can no longer trust the system and trust the external leaders, we have to trust ourselves. How can you trust yourself? How do you know when something lands? How do you know when something speaks to you? How do you know when something's off? Trust it. Learn to trust yourself and follow that trust, because that's the awakening that we need to have, is trusting ourselves, our light, so we can be the leaders we've been looking for, rather than being so disgruntled and disappointed and angry and all of the emotions that are within all of us, right? Because somebody is not living up to our trust. Well, the times are changing in that we get to redefine what trust means. And that first starts with ourself and trusting our soul, our essence, and our divine light.
Wow. It's like, that was awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Jeff, so much for being on the show, Light Warrior Radio. I'm just so glad we're now connected.
Us too.
Yes, and so plentyconsulting.com, everyone who's listening in. So again, thank you so much for your light and bringing your gifts to the world. I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh, yes. And thanks all of our light warriors, light medicine community for listening in as well. And if you're on my YouTube channel and you like this interview, give it a thumbs up and feel free to share with whoever you think may benefit. Lots of love, everyone. Until next time. Bye for now.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you.